In today's video, you're going to learn exactly what a React fragment is, why they are useful, as well as how to create them within React. So there is a rule of JSX in which you can only return one single parent element. So if we look at this example down here, and I comment this out, right now I'm getting an error because I'm trying to return two kind of parent elements here, this H1 and this P tag, meaning they are on the same level of HTML. This H1 is not a parent of this P tag. So since these are just siblings and I'm trying to return them both as the outermost element within this JSX, I get an error because JSX expressions must have one parent element. So one way to solve this is by wrapping this in a div. However, within your HTML, it's probably not the most semantic thing to do to just place divs everywhere within your program. And there's also issues where this can trigger invalid HTML. So if you're rendering out a table within your HTML and you're rendering out these table cells and you need to wrap them in one parent element, well, if you wrap them in a div and then you render them out within a table, that's actually invalid HTML to render a div within a table. So how can we get around that error, and how can we kind of prevent needing to wrap our elements within divs and then having all these kind of random div containers within our program that don't really make a lot of kind of semantic sense when it comes to our HTML? Well, that's where fragments come in. And a fragment allows you to group a list of children elements without needing to add extra elements to the DOM. So when you create a fragment, you can wrap your elements within the fragment so you can return one parent element, but it's not going to add anything else to the DOM. It's just going to kind of be a ghost element that doesn't get added to the DOM. And there are two ways that you can create fragments in React. The first is just to use the react.fragment element. And you could also just import fragment from React. So I could import fragment here and use it like that, but just to make sure that we are clear, I'm going to use react.fragment here. And then the second way is to just use a empty set of left and right arrow brackets. So you can use a pair of opening and closing empty brackets here. Now, there is one scenario in which you definitely do want to use the react.fragment version of creating a fragment, and that's if you need to add a key prop to an element. Because if you just use an empty pair of brackets here, you can't do something like key equals, some value for your key. That's going to be invalid, but you can, on a React fragment, you can add a key to a react.fragment. Okay, so definitely use this version if you're going to use a key prop. So to fix my example here, I can fix this. Instead of rendering out a div, I can just render out a react.fragment. And you see I get some autocomplete there as well. And then I still need to close this just like any other element, and I can do so there. So this allows me to return these elements, and it allows me to kind of wrap around these elements and return one parent element without adding any other elements to the DOM. And then the very same thing is going to work if I just use an opening and closing pair of brackets here. That is another way to use fragments. So a fragment in React allows you to group a list of child elements so you can just return one parent element, but the fragment isn't going to be rendered to the DOM, and it's going to prevent you from needing to wrap everything in a div or add elements to the DOM just to return that one parent element. And the two ways to create a fragment is to use the react.fragment element, or you can just use a opening and closing pair of arrow brackets like you see here, and that will also create a fragment. But if you need to add a key to your parent element, like if you're rendering out a list of items and you need to add a key, then you should use this syntax here of a fragment, the react.fragment syntax, instead of the left and right arrow brackets here. So hopefully that gives you a good understanding of how fragments work in React. Stay tuned for future React tutorials, and I'll see you in that next one.